So now moving ahead into the video, now I would be covering the release of insulin, how insulin is released in response to hyperglycemic states. So before moving into that, insulin is a polypeptide, right? There are two chains, alpha beta. I have just discussed it. It is released from the beta cells of the pancreas. So now first we have to understand the mechanism of insulin release from beta cells, correct?
चलो 1 2 3 भागो दौड़ो भाग और भाग 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 और भाग 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 और भाग भाग.
So now we will see that how insulin is released from the beta cells. So for example, what I have drawn here, this is a beta cell. This is a beta cell. This is a blood vessel in which the blood is flowing, carrying the glucose that is present. This is GLUT1. This is glucose transport. GLUT stands for glucose transport. This is in humans. We have GLUT1. In rodents, it is GLUT2. So this has to be remembered. Next, we have ATP sensitive potassium channels. Then we have voltage sensitive calcium channels. Then we have GPCR coupled to GS adenylyl cyclase pathway, and these are GI negative adenylyl cyclase pathway, and this is stored insulin. So now we will move with one by one step. So first, what happens that whenever we have taken some food, whenever we have eaten something that is converted into glucose, and when it is converted into glucose, it will flow into the blood. Once it flows into the blood, these are GLUT1 transporters. So what they do, see, beta cells, they are independent of their action is independent of insulin. So now this glucose, it is transported into the beta cell. Now this glucose has transported into the beta cell, and once this glucose is transported inside the beta cell, there is an enzyme called glucokinase. Glucokinase, what glucokinase does, this glucokinase converts it into glucose 6 phosphate, and then after a series of metabolic reactions, correct, after a series of metabolic reaction, this gets converted into ATP. This gets converted into ATP, correct. Before I talk about this ATP, first I have to discuss very important things about this potassium sensitive, this ATP sensitive potassium channel. So what is this ATP sensitive potassium channel? Very less number of books clearly describe what this ATP sensitive potassium channel does. In the past 10 to 15 years, it has been revealed the complete mechanism of action of these ATP sensitive potassium channel is understood. So what is this? This ATP sensitive potassium channel is an octamer. See, it is an octamer. Octamer means it will have 8 units. Now these 8 units are divided into 4. So now we have to see this very clearly, that this is an ATP sensitive potassium channel, and this is the top view. You are viewing it from the top. So this, we can say, it is a transfer section of this ATP sensitive potassium channel. So it is made up of two components. First is your KIR 6.2. These are actually the potassium channels. So these 4 subunits, they prepare the potassium channel, and you can see in the center, this is the central pore, correct. This is the pore. This is the pore through which the potassium will flow, and these are 4 subunits of SUR, sulfonylurea receptor 1. We were not aware of these, but these receptors were extensively studied because these sulfonylureas are used as a class of drugs. So now this is the pore where ATP actually binds and it closes this potassium flow. This channel, it moves potassium in both the directions. Correct? The movement of potassium happens in both the directions. It leads to efflux of the potassium as well, and it also leads to influx of the potassium. So potassium, as we all know, that it is a important intracellular ion. So the amount of potassium will be always higher inside the cell. Correct? And if we remember the membrane polarization, depolarization, so this was the depolarization, this was the repolarization process, if we remember it. And if you are not sure, I'm putting a link of this neurotransmission process or the membrane depolarization and repolarization process so that you can understand this easily. So this potassium, whenever this potassium channel will open, this opening of this potassium channel will lead to, very obvious, this will lead to efflux of the potassium. Opening of this potassium channel will lead to the efflux of this potassium, which will ultimately lead to hyperpolarization of the cell. Are we clear on this? Because at this stage our cell is polarized, at this point the cell is depolarized, at this point the cell is repolarizing. This membrane potential is approximately minus 70 millivolts, and if the potential goes below this is called as hyperpolarization. And since potassium is a cation, so if a cation leaves a cell, the cell will become hyperpolarized. And if a cell will become hyperpolarized, the cell will not respond to any of the stimuli. Correct? So this is the condition. Now what I have just told, that this ATP, it binds, for example, let us say, I am trying to draw it here. I am not sure I would be successful in drawing it or not. Somewhat. So this is the spore now through which this potassium will leave the cell. This potassium will start to leave the cell and the cell will undergo hyperpolarization. So now, since this channel, potassium channel, is sensitive to ATP, now what will happen? This ATP, it comes and blocks. For example, now I am drawing this ATP in green. So now this is ATP. This ATP will come and it will block this channel, and as a result what will happen, there will be inhibition of this channel. This ATP sensitive potassium channel will be inhibited. As a result, there will be accumulation of potassium inside the cell. There will be accumulation of potassium inside the cell, and when there will be accumulation of potassium inside the cell, this membrane potential will start to rise, and when it will rise, this will, instead of hyperpolarization, this will lead to depolarization, and that depolarization will be partial depolarization. And adjacent to this we have voltage sensitive calcium channels. Now what will happen, since there is partial depolarization, now this voltage sensitive ATP, this voltage sensitive calcium channel, now it will open, and calcium, that is an extracellular ion, it will start to flow inside the cell. This calcium will start to flow inside the cell, correct? And we know that insulin is stored in secretory granules. So for example, this is insulin, and with the action of this calcium on this insulin granules, these granules, they tend to fuse. This insulin fuse, and this insulin leaves, and this insulin is now released into the bloodstream. Now this insulin is released into the bloodstream, and now wherever there are insulin receptors present in the body, this insulin is showing its action. And everywhere in the human body, on almost every cell in the human body, we have insulin receptors. So this is the reason that release of insulin shows such a big spectra of actions, correct? Now along with this, I have drawn two more receptors. Both of these are GPCRs. Both of these receptors are GPCRs with different coupling mechanism. So this is GS. So their target will be adenyl cyclase. So this GS, what it does, it stimulates and what this GI does, it inhibits adenyl cyclase. So increase, and this adenyl cyclase, what it does, it forms cyclic AMP from ATP, and this cyclic AMP is also responsible for release of this insulin. So if there is decline, if there is reduction in cyclic AMP, intracellular cyclic AMP concentration, there would be inhibition of insulin release, and if there is stimulation, then there will be more cyclic AMP, and this cyclic AMP will lead to release of insulin. So now I would like to draw your attention to one more important thing, like during stress conditions our body requires high amount of glucose, correct? So in that condition there is stimulation of alpha 2 receptor, because what is the function of insulin? Insulin tends to reduce blood glucose level, but during stress condition, if our muscles have to perform certain strenuous activities, then in that condition this insulin has to stop, this insulin action has to stop. Now this alpha 2 receptor, it is coupled to GI. So if we see, if you go and check, this alpha 2 is coupled to GI, and whenever there is alpha 2 activation because of the sympathetic outflow, this alpha 2 activation will always lead to the inhibition of insulin, while this GS is coupled to beta 2, it is also coupled to GIP, correct? Incretins, DPP4 inhibitors, they act here, correct? So this is how the insulin will be released. But one very important thing that I told in the beginning, that this channel, this ATP sensitive potassium channel, leads to influx and outflux. It also has a inward rectifier current, because in some conditions potassium has to be imported inside the cell also in order to inhibit the release of insulin, correct? So I need you to very clearly and very strongly learn this diagram, understand this, and once you understand this, insulin release and all the oral hypoglycemics will be very easy things for you to understand and do. So I'm reviewing this once more, like glucose release, whenever we have taken something, there will be high concentration of glucose. Now this glucose will be transported by GLUT1 inside the cell. Now this glucose will be acted upon by enzyme glucokinase into glucose 6-phosphate, and there will be a series of metabolic reactions that will lead to conversion of this glucose into ATP. Now this ATP will block this ATP sensitive potassium channel. This ATP sensitive potassium channel has 4 units of KAR6, which actually form the potassium pore, and 4 subunits of the SUR1, sulfonylurea 1. These two different types of subunits are totally unrelated. Now when this channel leads to efflux of potassium, but ATP blocks this channel, and as a result there is accumulation of potassium inside the cell. When there is potassium accumulation inside the cell, there is partial depolarization, which leads to opening of these voltage gated calcium channels. This calcium influx leads to the increase in membrane fluidity, and this insulin is released from the pancreatic beta cell. Along with this, these are G protein coupled receptors for different molecules, different ligands. So beta 2 receptors and alpha 2 receptors, but the action of beta 2 is very less, the action of alpha 2 is very prominent on pancreatic beta cells. So whenever there is stimulation, or whenever there is stimulation of your GS coupled G proteins, there will be adenyl cyclase activation, there will be cyclic AMP synthesis. This also leads insulin release, and counter actions are seen when there is activation of GI coupled GPCRs. So I forgot to turn on the recording and recorded this whole thing. So I'm not drawing it again, but I would be explaining this to us. So this is the insulin receptor, and this insulin receptor is a RTK, receptor tyrosine kinase. And if you are unsure about how these receptor tyrosine kinase work, I'm putting a link here so that you can go and first have a look at the how these enzymatic receptors they work, correct? So these are subunits. Whenever in the previously we have studied about how this insulin is being released. So after this insulin is released, it will come and bind to its receptor, and once it binds to this receptor, I am not going into the details of this process. Once insulin binds to its receptor, this will lead to the receptor dimerization and activation of the intracellular fraction. It is alpha and beta subunits. So now there is activation and they cross phosphorylate each other. So there will be phosphorylation. This unit will phosphorylate this unit and this will phosphorylate this. And now when these enzymes, when these are phosphorylated, then what happens? They lead to recruit, then they recruit several other enzymes which will perform certain other functions in the body, inside the cell. So first is the IRS, insulin receptor substrate. So first it is phosphorylated and then it activates this PI3 kinase, which has its own array of actions. It leads to protein synthesis. As I already mentioned that insulin is anabolic, so this will lead to protein synthesis. It also leads to lipid synthesis, lipogenesis, and it also promotes glycogenesis. This insulin increases the uptake of all these proteins, lipids and glucose and reduces their metabolism. So insulin is more of a anabolic or conservative hormone. So this leads to protein synthesis, this leads to glycogenesis, and this also leads to enzyme action modulation. Certain other enzymes which promote these actions, they will also be modulated. Along with that, this PI3K, this produces secondary enzyme PIP3. Now this PIP3 stimulates this AKT pathway. That AKT pathway, I will come to that later. And here what is there? Like there are two other proteins that are being activated, GAB1 and SHC. They are activating this MAP kinase pathway. Now this MAP kinase pathway is mostly shows its role in the in gene transcription processes or in protein synthesis. So this leads to more of the cell proliferation, growth, transcription. All these factors are promoted. And now after transcription, there is production of mRNA. We know this. Now this mRNA will be converted into protein, and these proteins are leading to synthesis of GLUT4. Now in the previous cell, in the beta cell, I had told that there is GLUT1, correct? But in this condition there is GLUT4 because this is not a beta cell. This is any other cell except beta cell. So now this is synthesis of GLUT4, and now this GLUT4 is present here. It is being synthesized more inside the cell. Now this AKT pathway, when it is activated by this PIP3, now this AKT will lead to the translocation of this GLUT4 to the membrane of the cell. GLUT4. Now this GLUT4 will be located in the membrane, and in the blood vessels there would be blood flowing that would be containing glucose. That will be containing glucose. Now this glucose will be taken up by the cell, and now this glucose will be utilized by the cell for its actions, correct? Now in the very beginning I told that there are three classical symptoms associated with diabetes mellitus: polyuria, polyphagia and polydipsia. Now we have to understand why those symptoms are developing, because during diabetes mellitus, I told in the beginning that there can either be of two conditions. Either they can be lack of insulin, or they can be malfunctioning in the insulin signaling. So even if the insulin is present, our cells cannot respond to that insulin. So now if there is lack of insulin, we can see what will happen, that this glucose, if there is a lack of insulin, this complete process will not occur. There will be lack of glucose. This glucose will not be transported inside the cell. The cell will keep on sending signals to the brain that we are hungry, we need more nutrition, more glucose is required. So that leads to the patient of diabetes to eat very frequently, correct? So this is the reason behind polyphagia, frequent eating. Then this glucose that is present inside the blood, now this blood will become hyperosmolar. When this will become hyperosmolar, what will happen? For example, this is your blood vessel, these are your cells. So this is hyperosmolar, this is hypoosmolar. So there will be movement of water from here to here. This will lead to increased blood volume and tissue dehydration. When there will be tissue dehydration, these tissues will send signal to the brain that there has been lack of water, the water has been removed from us. This will lead to polydipsia, excessive thirst in the individual, and This increased blood volume, when the blood volume increase, since the blood volume has risen, the body will try to get rid of that excess fluid because there would be excess pressure on the blood vessels. So this increased blood, now what will happen? This increased blood volume will be countered by the kidneys, and that will lead to frequent urination. So with this, I guess I am clear with the pathophysiology of diabetes, insulin, its structure, function, its release, how insulin is synthesized, and how insulin plays a role in body's energy metabolism. So with this, I would like to end this video. In the next video, I would be covering all the oral hypoglycemic drugs. Till then, you have something to search, that what can be the therapeutic approaches for management of diabetes mellitus. I have referred to several textbooks as well as a few research papers in preparation of this lecture. I would be providing the links of all those books in the description box below. So if you want to have a look which books I have referred, you can have a look on those books. And if you have been able to understand anything out of this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, share the channel. If you like this video, like it also. And thank you very much, and happy learning to all of us.